to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing an album review. I'm going to be taking a look at this record today, which is the album Raise the Pressure by Electronic. So I'll just be doing my usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album songs in detail. So this video was a request by user Joe Morgan, so thank you very much for requesting like this video. So Electronic are like a Manchester kind of music duo supergroup kind of thing, consisting of Johnny Marr, formerly of the Smiths, and Bernard Sumner from New Order. This it's a kind of on-off kind of collaboration that they had going throughout the 90s. So this being their second of 3 albums they released. This one was released on the 8th of July in 1996. So there had been quite a large gap between this and their debut album, which came out in 1991, and like in like the interim, like they kind of went their separate ways a little bit. Sumner kind of reunited with New Order and made the album Republic, while Johnny Marr returned to his work with The, who he'd been a kind of again like an on-off member like for like a few years previously. Another like notable like figure like appears on this album in the form of ex Kraftwerk member Karl Bartos. So he did a lot of the synths and kind of programming on this album, and also co-wrote 7 out of the 13 album tracks. Now there's also some quite interesting footage on YouTube of them actually recording this album. So it was taken from a documentary about the antidepressant drug Prozac, for which Bernard Sumner was one of the trial kind of patients like of like this drug, to see like what impact it had like on like people's like creativity. So it's a little kind of BBC documentary made like at like the time like about like people like who had tried this drug, and like with Sumner being one of them. So there's some like interesting footage of them actually recording this album like as part of that, which displays there's some quite interesting scenes where there's a bit of tension going on between Marr and Sumner. Marr typically says that like he likes to put his guitar on after the vocal has been done. Essentially the kind of last thing like he'll do like on a track is basically build up all of the guitars around the vocal. However, Sumner was leaving the kind of lyric writing for this album pretty much right until like the last minute, so that did cause a little bit like of tension like recording the album. He does say though in the documentary that being on like the Prozac drug did help him write in a slightly less introverted style, and he found that writing like did come like a lot easier like to him. So there's also notable this record here, you know, like it took quite a long time to record as well, you know, like they took over a year like these sessions, which resulted in a very dense and very well produced and like kind of well-rounded sort of album. In terms of its commercial performance, it was a bit of a, I don't want to say a letdown, but certainly compared to the first album, this one was a definite step down. So it reached number 8 on the UK chart, staying on the charts for 5 weeks. So this was a step down compared to the debut, which peaked at number 2 and stayed on the charts for 16 weeks. So very much a kind of flash in the pan kind of album, like in terms of like its commercial performance. Reviews also of the album like at the time were rather middling as well, with the Enemy writing that the album was conservative and like was basically just like kind of slagging off kind of Sumner and Marr as being a bit past it, a little bit old. And I mean like at the time they would have still only been in like the kind of like the mid to late 30s, but even then they were considered dinosaurs a little bit like at this time, and that kind of shone through like in some of like the reviews like of the album. So anyway, I will try to show you my vinyl copy of it. So this is a original pressing of it, which I'm quite fortunate to get. These are quite rare, but I bought this one like online. So there is the cover to it there. It's never been reissued either. So yeah, very fortunate to have it. Very plain design on the back there, like in contrast to the front. And then there's no inner sleeve or print off or insert or like whatever. Just on this kind of green sort of label there. So a little bit poor in the packaging department. No picture of them on it either. Okay, so anyway, we'll now go over each of the album songs in detail, score each track out of 10, and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album.
And it's too late to wash my hands.
So the album kicks off with Forbidden City, which is a solid kind of mid-tempo opening track, lyrically about kind of betrayal perhaps. He sings like, would you lie to me if you thought I was wrong? You deserted me when it all went wrong. It's one of Electronic's most popular songs in terms of like it was like the album's kind of like lead-off single, reaching number 14 like on the charts. I must say, going into this review, it was never a huge favourite of mine. I just always thought it was just a bit of a kind of like average track. But once I've gotten to know this song more, it has definitely grown on me and is certainly one of the album's standout tracks. So yeah, Forbidden City would get a 9 out of 10.
Can we meet on the street, maybe tomorrow?
Okay, next up is For You, which is for me the standout track on the album. This is a great song. A lot more guitar driven and heavy, you know. This is one of the tracks where you can really tell it's almost more like a kind of Johnny Marr solo song, almost with Bernard Sumner singing over it, because there's very little like in like the way of synthesizers like or anything like on this track. It's just great guitar kind of wall of sound like on it. It's an upbeat single, very much full of life about like sort of these things like, can we meet on the street, maybe tomorrow, see the world at our feet, naked in the hollow. It's a great song. This was also a single. It reached number 16 on the chart. So yeah, it got they certainly got like two top 20 singles out of this album. So that's certainly not like too bad. Yeah, like it's a great song. Infectious chorus, easily for me my favourite track on the album.
Please don't make me wait.
Okay, next up is Dark Angel. Now this one is an interesting track in quite a few ways. It's a different kind of, there's a few different parts to it. It kind of starts off a lot darker and kind of mysterious, and then kind of suddenly you get this kind of like the kind of jangly kind of house piano kind of sound. You know, it's a bit off its time, I would say, and yeah, even I think by this point, like the album coming out was almost maybe slightly out of date, like as well. The kind of house music thing had kind of been and gone like a little bit. I mean, it's a pleasant enough song. This more dancey, more kind of Sumner's New Order like influence coming to the fore, like on this track here. And you've also got a nice vocal contribution from a singer, Denise Johnson. So she kind of sings like the kind of second half like off the track, and I think it's good. It's kind of good. It's kind of good to hear like a different voice like on this album. It's just, yeah, it goes on a little bit too long. There's this lengthy instrumental bit like in the middle which I could really do without, but it's okay. So I would give it a 7 out of 10 though there for Dark Angel.
One day and it won't be long. We'll stand in this place.
Next up on the album is called One Day. Now this one, we're back to a more guitar kind of driven track, this one here, which kind of has this sort of like anthemic kind of looking towards a kind of better future kind of feel to like the lyrics. He sings to it like, one day and it won't be long, we'll stand in this place and discover. So it's quite upbeat, quite like outward looking, which certainly was maybe perhaps a kind of influence like off like the Prozac drug that like Sumner was on like trial for, like as I said. There's some nice bits to like this track, like kind of like there's a good kind of like the post chorus bit, like where he goes like, I'm not ashamed to tell you, I can't believe it's over. I think that bit's good. And then there's a wordless kind of vocal interlude which is good as well. I just think that lyrically is maybe a little bit generic and a little bit like off its time as well. You know, this was kind of Britpop was kind of around, and there was a kind of sense of kind of 90s optimism of kind of love and kind of peace, like kind of like second summer love kind of thing going on. And these are kind of lyrics which kind of fit into that, and they just don't really grab me too much, but it's a decent track there. So yeah, I would give One Day an 8 out of 10 overall.
This love was born instead of hate. Celebrate our...
Okay, next up is called Until the End of Time. Now this one is a more of a kind of what I would probably call a kind of thumping dance banger. You know, it's got this kind of, again, Someone I Love, like sort of like Manchester kind of lyrics to it, which are very much like in vogue, like in like the early 90s, and it feels quite similar to the last track, One Day, like in terms like of like its sentiment, like this love was born instead of hate, celebrate our love, let's feel the right vibe, the right vibration, celebrate our love. You've then got these kind of like big backing vocals on it. For me, it's just rather forgettable, this track. In terms of its music arrangement, it's just slightly generic, and it's definitely not a favourite of mine. Certainly, like if this was on CD, would probably be a track I would skip.
Let's be a nation and see
Okay, next up is called Second Nature, which closes off the first side of the album. So this one is a kind of more autobiographical song about Sumner's kind of childhood, like an upbringing, with slightly linear kind of lyrics in terms of he's sort of very literal lyrics, like I lived at home with all my family, I even had my own key, it was given to me, I liked to be alone, there was never any friction, starring in my own film, it was my addiction, he sings like on like the verse. So I mean they're okay lyrics. I just feel that the song itself is quite overstretched, which does become a bit of a theme like on this album. Certainly in terms of like taken like as a whole, the album like is well over like an hour, considering there's only like 12 proper tracks in here. You know, some of these songs are quite lengthy, and this is certainly like one of them. It's also one where the production really comes to the fore, and you can kind of like up to this point, it's been relatively stomachable, like the production. You know, it's kind of fitted the songs, but on this track, it just is getting a bit too kind of cumbersome for me. So this was also a single as well, but it did fare a lot poorer than the first two, only reaching number 35 on the UK charts. So yeah, Second Nature, it's okay, probably like average kind of song there. So yeah, 6 out of 10 for that one.
Stop if you've got love, take all your faith and make it.
Okay, now side 2 opens up with a track called If You've Got Love. So this one is a decent track. Again, it's a kind of more of a love song kind of lyrically, combined with kind of electronic beats and kind of like a dancey production. The chorus is really solid, like that stop if you've got love, take all your faith and make it good, bow down, surrender, follow love and make it yours forevermore. So yeah, lyrically maybe a bit generic, but I do think it's quite catchy, and like the kind of like there's a nice contrast between the verse and like the chorus, which really makes the kind of chorus pay off. But for me, the reason why the song is only getting a 7 out of 10 is because of its length, which stretches out to nearly 7 minutes, and it's certainly by about the 4 or 5 minute mark is really starting to test my patience. And it's just because it doesn't change, like, you know, it's a good song, but they just kind of flog it like a little bit too hard for me. So yeah, we'll get a 7 out of 10 there for If You've Got Love.
You're out of my league, but
Okay, next up is Out of My League. Now this one is one of the strongest tracks on the album for me. Really reminds me musically of kind of Technique era New Order, specifically the track Loveless, which has a kind of got like it's kind of dancey, but it's also got like acoustic guitars like on it as well, very breezy kind of song, and this kind of open sounding piano, you know, like, there's a lot of space to breathe like on this track, which I really like. Lyrically, like another love song about kind of I guess singing about a partner who you kind of perceive as being kind of too good for you, you know, like quite literally, like you're out of my league. He sings like, but I'm depending on you, you're all that I need, so why don't you say that it's true? So again, not the deepest lyrics, but one of the most pleasant and most memorable tracks like on the album there for me.
look at the rain, look at it falling into my world.
Okay, next one up is called Free Fall. So this one is actually, I say next one up, it's preceded by a little thing called Interlude, which is a kind of pointless track for me. It doesn't really do anything, doesn't really add to the album's sense of cohesion or kind of linking into the song. It's just kind of there, you know, like on the album as a kind of less like minute or so song, which just feels, a little bit silly, like to have like on the album personally. But then comes out this track, Free Fall, which is a kind of another house styled song, a little bit unremarkable, like kind of musically. It's maybe it's just my personal preference. I do tend to probably prefer the more guitar based songs like on this album rather than the dancey stuff. But again, slightly generic kind of sort of like lyrics on this one about a kind of discovering like a cheating partner, like on this one, like says like, look at the rain, look at it falling into my world, why are you calling, he sings on it. It's okay, but again a little bit like unremarkable, so 5 out of 10 there for Free Fall. Okay, next up is called Visit Me, which for me is the weakest track on the album. It's another kind of mid-tempo song, a bit dull, and it's boring lyrics on it as well, which just don't grab me at all. He sings like, she's coming home to visit me tonight, and that kind of thing, and it's just starting. I'm just starting to lose interest in the album by this point, personally. There's a semi-interesting instrumental break where you get these very heavily synthesized strings on it, which give this track a sense of grandeur and drama, which the song arguably doesn't really warrant. Again, and then certainly the thing which I really don't like about this track is there's a kind of like a false ending on it. You know, you get a bit where it kind of breaks, you think, oh, thank God that's over, and then the song comes back in again, and you just think, nah, you should have just ended it earlier than that. So yeah, not a favourite man, Visit Me, a 4 out of 10.
I heard this sound for 1,000 years.
Okay, then thankfully, the penultimate track on the album really redeems this second half of the record. So we get a song called How Long, which is, again, it's one of the more dancey, more synthesized songs, but I just think the melody on this is so strong, and Sumner sings it really well. Again, it's another track about kind of like love lost. He sings like, satisfy your every wish, I can be a part of this, you'll never forgive me, but what do I care? And it's a great song. I love the production on it. I think it really shines through like on like this track. And yeah, it's all around just a really good song there. So How Long for me would get a 9 out of 10.
Will we still be together in a year from now?
Okay, the next up to close off the album is called Time Can Tell. So this is a kind of slightly more low-key kind of closer, this one here. It kind of almost feels like the kind of like lyrics seem to kind of come full circle. Like we've had a lot of tracks about kind of like love lost and kind of sort of like people like having affairs and relationships kind of dying. But then this track here is there's a sense of hopefulness to this song here, but also a sense of doubt as well. Like he sings like, will we still be together in a year from now, or do we hate each other? We're gonna get through somehow. It's a good closer, I think, and it's quite a catchy song like as well. Like certainly you can occasionally find yourself like humming like along to like this track here. It's quite good. So yeah, Time Can Tell for me will get an 8 out of 10. Decent track. Okay, so overall, this album would get 73%. So I would say this is a mixed bag of an album. I think there's some really good, memorable moments where, you know, like they've really come together and produced some great quality music together. But also a lot of filler, like on here. Like for me, generally, it kind of feels a little bit like on this album, like the kind of the original idea behind like electronic was to kind of meld Johnny Marr's guitar with kind of synthesizers and dance music, and to kind of do the two together like at the same time. However, the issue I guess with this album is it feels like you get a guitar-led song, then a synth song, then a guitar-led song, then a kind of dance house song, you know, and it feels like the two styles never quite come together and never quite marry up like on this album, which was perhaps more true like on like the debut album. Seems to be a lot more natural kind of fusion, whereas this one here just feels like they're kind of two separate styles, and the album slightly struggles to find its feet like a little bit. It does also mean like in places that Johnny Marr like is almost unnoticeable like on this album. So certainly on tracks like Dark Angel, Until the End of Time, Freefall, Visit Me, there's almost no trace of Johnny Marr like even being like on this album. And yeah, like I said, like there's quite a few fillery songs. It's probably too long as well, you know, stretches out for well over like an hour. Certainly a lot of these tracks would have been stronger for me if they'd been edited down like a little bit. And yeah, like, or even taken off a couple like off-like tracks, but it's a good record though. There's some standout tracks in here and some like underrated songs which often like don't get talked about and kind of have been kind of almost like lost to time. Certainly For You, I think, is a song which Johnny Marr should be playing like live in concert like to this day. It's absolutely fantastic. So anyway, yeah, that's been my review of Electronic's album Raise the Pressure. So yes, I hope you have enjoyed the review. If there's any suggestions for future reviews, please do leave them down below in the comments, and I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.